Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. This is Expresso on S3, and in keeping with this morning's theme, we're pleased to welcome into studio Dr. Michelle Botha, who has a PhD in Disability Studies from the University of Cape Town, with research expertise on disability rehabilitation, identity, and inequality in South Africa. She joins us to talk about the plight of people with rare and invisible conditions. She also is a musician on top of that, which is very, very impressive, by the way. And I've been hearing some of the sound checks and it's sounding fantastic. But of course, from the panel to an individual seat, Michelle, welcome. We are overusing you today, but just forgive us.
That's okay.
Because it's important. Okay, lovely, because we want to make sure that we broach this topic and get into the nitty-gritty, which is quite important. But I want to talk very quickly about the visually impaired society, so to speak, those individuals who tend to think that their particular disability is sort of in a massive limitation to them as well. I mean, you're a musician, you know, you're here today, and that shows so much. But tell me a bit more about your opinions on those who are visually impaired and the way they perceive themselves in society.
Yeah, I mean, I think my own experience as someone with a visual impairment growing up was partly about practical, and I've spoken about this in the panel as well, but partly about practical, you know, challenges and difficulties. But for me, it was about very much about identity. Again, coming back to that idea, you know, making sense of who am I in the world. And for many years, my visual impairment, I've experienced progressive vision loss over my life. So for many years, my visual impairment was not readily visible to others. It was easy to hide, and I did hide it. And I think that's something, you know, as well to talk about when we come to talking about people with more unseen and invisible disabilities. You know, when we think about disability, we often, you know, as society, we think about the disabilities that we know the most. We think about people who use wheelchairs, people who are visually impaired like myself. But disability is incredibly diverse. And there are so many people walking through our world who have significant disabling conditions, and we may never know. We'll never know to see them walking past us. And I think that's something that we also need to be aware of as we go through our lives, to know that we don't know what the person next to us is experiencing and going through.
And I love that you've said that. And this is why you've done extensive research on it as well, because, you know, when it comes to the way society sees different individuals, I mean, you've done extensive research. So when you look at your research, you know, what are some of the things that your research has called to change? What are some of the things that you've traversed that you believe is giving you the key points of improvement for stakeholders, government, and individuals to look at?
I mean, again, it comes down to the issue of attitude, and it comes down to, you know, spaces that include people and welcome people. And you know, it's what the Arts Ability Festival is all about as well. You know, how are people represented? What do, I think it was mentioned earlier, you know, what do young people see? What do young people with disabilities see of themselves in the world, in the media? And how does that impact what they feel they can do and be? How do we tell a different story about what people with disabilities can do and what they can be?
Stories. I love that you've touched on that, because I believe you have a story of a friend named Paula.
Yes.
And disability doesn't discriminate, which is a powerful sentence. I want to know a bit more about Paula and what the campaign is behind Paula. Yeah,
so I'm very privileged today to be representing Paula Jackson and her family. Up until 10 years ago, Paula lived what we would think of as a typical life. A young person, first job, first place of her own.
Yes.
And very suddenly, and Erica spoke about this as well, how disability can happen to anyone at any time, very suddenly began to experience debilitating symptoms. To look at her on the street, you would not have said that she was in chronic pain, but she was. And she didn't know why for many years, and eventually received the diagnosis of ME, or chronic fatigue syndrome. But even that didn't explain her symptoms, and very recently, due to a lot of investigation on her part, and so many people with these rare conditions don't get the support they need and have to do a lot of legwork on their own to discover what they're experiencing. She received a diagnosis of hypermobility spectrum disorder, which affects the connective tissue in the body. So the things that are holding us together and keeping our frames moving
Yes.
in Paula are degenerating and deteriorating to the point where she can't lift her head anymore. She is almost completely bedbound at the moment. And really, I think, you know, the importance of Paula's story is to highlight, as I said, the diversity of disability, the fact that disability can affect anyone at any time. Her mother has written very movingly about, you know, this is not what we expected. This is not how we expected our lives to be. And we've been overwhelmed, actually, by the campaign that Paula started a few weeks ago,
Yes.
Paula's Ladder to Life. Paula discovered that there is a surgery that she can have. It's only available in the UK. And she has decided to raise funds to receive that surgery. We have been overwhelmed by the support of the community here in South Africa and globally of this campaign. We really hope it's going to raise awareness about people with this particular condition, raise awareness of the available treatment. As far as we know, Paula will be the first person on the continent to have this procedure. And we really hope that a positive result for her is going to raise awareness for others as well.
Wow, this is a powerful story. Paula's Ladder to Life, and if you'd like to pick up on that, we will have those details for you on screen and a little bit later. And remember, Dr. Michelle Botha, jack of all trades, it appears today, performance just a little bit later in your Feel Good Breakfast Show. But for now, let's take a peek at the news from around the world.